Bag alert, bag alert, bag alert, bag alert, folks. Josh Allen got the bag. We're gonna talk about the draft. A few teams that have definitely caught my eye and talk about the results of those mock drafts. We're also going to talk about whose playoff window is open, closed, or shut, and more on the Football Junkies Podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail. Let's go! All right, folks. So if you don't know, defensive end slash outside linebacker, pass rusher for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Josh Allen just got the Binks truck, folks. A 5-year, $150 million deal with 88 of that guaranteed. Now, this paves the way for them to just focus on trying to re-sign Trevor Lawrence. It was a great sign. Definitely very much needed for the Jaguars because had he left the Jaguars, who is to say that that defense would still be as productive as it has been within the last few years? However, we do have to talk about how the pass rusher market as a whole is starting to sort of get out of hand. And the reason why I say that is because we are now hitting the threshold where players are now making 25, 30, 35. I wouldn't even be surprised close to maybe 40 in within the near future. And so although yes, teams do value pass rushers, it's hard to decipher if a pass rusher is sort of a generational talent and has consistently shown, growth and has consistently been, one of the top pass rushers in the league, or, it was just one great year and, they basically capitalize off of it. So you definitely have to sort those type of things out when we definitely talk about these bag alerts, as I call them. Now, granted, he is, if I'm not mistaken, he is top 5 highest paid. So he's bumping elbows with Chris Jones. He's bumping elbows with Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt and even Brian Burns, even Nick Bosa. Congratulations to Josh Allen and him getting the bag. Now that we've gotten over the bag alert, let's talk about what's going on in the league. Now, you're probably wondering, why there isn't a whole lot of noise, why, there's still some free agents that are still out that haven't gone. This is the time where teams are, they're finalizing going to pro days, they're finalizing going to private players who got injured sort of the later part of the season and who are now getting medically cleared to participate in football, as well as people developing their big board and their draft board. So when in this phase, a lot of times teams are not going to be focused on, free agent signings unless it's something, out of a dire need. Then, okay, cool. But most of the times it's, most likely preparing for the draft, or, they could be in contract negotiations with certain players. It's quiet, yes, but at the same time, there is still things going on behind closed doors. Now, when the draft is only a few days. It's only days away. It's not even weeks away. I think it's less than 2 weeks away, if I'm not mistaken. So everybody's trying to finalize and figure out what do they want to do with their pick and whatnot, and who is their first pick that they want to choose from and whatnot. So it's a lot of activity, a lot of motion going on within the league right now. But I decided I wanted to test the waters once again, since I am one of the best GMs who is not on a team right now. I decided to choose 3 different teams. Now, with these 3 different teams, I decided to choose them based off of their position within the draft. So I wanted to choose a team that's high in the draft, in the middle of the draft, and then at the bottom part of the draft. Okay. So the teams that I chose were the Arizona Cardinals, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, disclaimer right now to the fan bases of all 3 of these teams. I did not do this out of spite. I did not do this out of malice. I did not do this because I do not like any of your teams. No, I just did this. I just chose y'all simply because I wanted to see how things would plan out. And they actually planned out pretty good. I'm actually surprised, except for Ravens fans. But who cares about them, right? Nobody does. Pittsburgh Steelers all the way. Moving on. Moving on. So when we break things down, based off of these three teams, we have to look at their needs. So for the Cardinals' needs are wide receiver, edge, corner, running back, interior offensive line. Ravens, it's interior offensive line, offensive tackle, edge, receiver, safety. And then for the Jaguars, it's edge, corner, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, and interior offensive line. Now, based off of just saying that, we could definitely sort of go deeper before I go and tell you about the results of the mock drafts. Based off of the team needs, I could make a strong case that two of these teams will probably be able to, address one or two of those positions high, while the other is going to have to trade up. Who is the team that's going to have to trade up? It's the Ravens. And the reason why I say that is because, although yes, this is a big offensive tackle class, the problem with the offensive tackle class is once it goes past J.C. Latham, Taloise Fuaga, Troy Fatanu, Amarius Mims, and whatnot, there is a definite drop in sort of productivity in players. Okay, I mean, you still have Amarius Mims, you still have your Patrick Pauls, you still have your Tyler Guytons and whatnot. But the problem with those type of players is they're still raw, and it's going to take them some time. It's going to take them at least maybe a season or two for them to actually get comfortable and to become starters. Whereas where you have a J.C. Latham, a Taloise Fuaga, a Troy Fatanu, you can plug them in day one. They can start week one immediately, no problem. But at the same time, they're in my prediction, and I'm not a genie. I don't know the future and whatnot. I truly believe a lot of the teams, high up are going to trade down. And the reason why I say that is because teams now are going to be focused on quarterbacks and receivers. Those are the two biggest classes right now that everybody is talking about, everybody is obsessed with. And so what you have is there are going to be some teams who need a quarterback really bad that are in the lower part of the draft that are going to want to trade up. Case in point, the Vikings, for instance. Yes, the Vikings do have 2 first-round picks, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings are going to trade up even higher to really get their quarterback. Case in point, the Cowboys. The Cowboys need a quarterback. And the reason, and again, full disclaimer, Cowboy fans, don't hate me. I'm just calling it for what it is, the way I see it. Cowboys are basically in a direction where they have to prepare for the future. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think Jerry Jones is going to be willing to pay Dak Prescott almost $60 million a year, and they haven't gone, to an NFC Championship, let alone a Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to do that personally. And then when you look at it, this is probably the best quarterback class that you're going to have, in a while. And the reason why I say that is because you don't know how things are going to pan out next year. You don't. Even though, yes, you have Shador Sanders and you have Quinn Ewers and you have Jalen Milroe and whatnot. Why do that when there is a quarterback that, you could definitely have them sit under Dak and learn under Dak for a season and actually understand things, rather than, to basically just get somebody and then just push them in the fire and say, okay, figure it out. That's the problem. When you look at a lot of quarterbacks nowadays, especially quarterbacks that are getting drafted high and are coming into the league, a lot of times, they're being put into the fire and they're not having an opportunity to just sit. I guarantee you, if a lot of these quarterbacks just sat under a veteran quarterback for a season, maybe even 2 seasons, you would see a difference in production compared to just throwing them into the fire. Case in point, the Packers, for instance, right? When the Packers drafted Jordan Love, everybody was losing their mind. Oh my God, why would you draft Jordan Love? Aaron Rodgers is coming off of winning another MVP and whatnot. But the reason why they did that is because so they can have him sit under Aaron Rodgers for a while and learn under him, even if Aaron isn't, physically like showing him like, hey, this is what you do in this situation. Hey, this is what you do in that situation. Hey, this is what you do with this or that, whatever the case may be. Just him being on the field, on the bench, and absorbing what he's seeing, play after play, game after game. That goes a long way compared to just saying, okay, yeah, forget about Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love, you start in week 1. No. And so that is the situation that you have now. You have, other teams who, for instance, I don't know, the Saints, for instance, who right now their pressing need, as I said before in the previous episode, is an offensive lineman. Their star right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk, he might have to medically retire because of his knee. And so when you have situations like that emerge, that can literally shift an entire draft board simply because now you have a position where you may value, okay, we'll address it, in the second or third round. Now you're going to have to address that in the first round, especially with the position that you are in the draft. And so I say all that to say this. I would not be surprised if we see multiple trade ups and trade downs either the night of the draft or before the draft. I wouldn't be surprised because there are a lot of teams that are not being talked about that have definitely, saw a few prospects that they probably realized that they're going to have to trade up to get. Whether that be an offensive lineman, whether that be a corner, whether it be a receiver, quarterback, whatever the case may be. There is a lot of talent. And some of this talent, it's going to require you to trade up. It is. Now, to some extent, it all depends. You may have to trade up 1 or 2 spots. You may have to trade up 10 spots. It all depends where you are. And that is the beauty of the draft. Now that we've done past that, let's talk about the mock draft results. So, with the Cardinals mock draft, we'll do them first. So with their first pick, I decided to trade down. And the reason why I decided to trade down was instead of me taking that 4th pick, I would just trade. I decided to trade down, which then allowed me to acquire more picks, which, you always want more picks. And so with the 12th pick, I decided to draft Rome Odunze. The next pick, I decided to draft Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois. With the next pick, I decided to draft Darius Robinson, edge from Mizzou. The next pick, I decided to draft Renardo Green. After that, Dominic Paul. And then the final pick, I drafted Brandon Rice. And here is the sweet spot, folks. I have the Jets' 2nd round pick, Cincinnati's 3rd round pick, and Cleveland's 3rd round pick, and Kansas City 3rd round pick. That's great. And the reason why I say that is because you could use those picks for a future trade for a player, or you could use those picks to get back into the first round if you want to. See? It's these type of situations where you sort of have to be experimental. And the reason why I say that is because it wasn't that big of a drop. Going from 4 to 12, it's not that big. It's just not. Now, if I was going from the 4th pick of the draft to the 22nd pick of the draft, then it's like, okay, that's a lot. That is a big move. That means that you are confident that the player that you have, that you want, is going to be available when it gets to the 22nd pick. Just, briefly go over these players. Johnny Newton, one of the best defensive tackles in this upcoming draft class. He T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, and Mason Smith are sort of the creme de la creme for defensive tackles. I know not a lot of people are talking about Mason Smith as much, but they definitely should. Simply because his athleticism is very scary in a good way. Let me put that out there, because when they say scary, some people are like, "Oh, it could be a bad thing." No, it's a good thing. Trust me, it's a good thing. The best way I can put it, and Steelers fans, we know, Stephon Tuitt. Stephon Tuitt is a lot of people's comp for Mason Smith. If you don't know who Stephon Tuitt is, go on YouTube, look up Stephon Tuitt. He's probably sacked your quarterback in the past. That's all I'm going to say. Now, moving on, moving on to the Ravens. I decided to just keep things traditional with them, and so with their 30th pick, I decided to draft Darius Robinson, edge from Missouri. With their second pick, I decided to draft Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver from Florida. And with their third pick, I decided to draft Dorian Taylor Demerson. Now, this is what I will say. Ricky Pearsall is a sleeper of a pick. And the reason why I say that is because his skill set is very good. Very good. He has great footwork, great hands, can create separation. He's a great slot option. I wouldn't be surprised if a team tries to have him play on the outside as well. I do know there has been a recent video of him emerging with him practicing with both Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So if he's practicing with the both of them, who, by all means, a lot of people say that they are the best receivers and probably the best route runners in the league, then, that's something you got to look out for. But moving on to the Jaguars. This is my favorite one, even though I'm not a Jaguars fan. Not Pittsburgh Steelers all day. With their 17th pick, I decided to draft J.C. Latham, tackle from Alabama. I decided to trade down from with their second round pick and draft Renardo Green. Their third pick, I drafted Brandon Rice, receiver from USC. Their fourth pick, Mason Smith, just went over him. You can just scroll back maybe a few minutes or so, and you can listen to my comp for him. Brandon Coleman, guard from TCU, and then their final pick, Luke McCaffrey. Now, not a lot of people are talking about Luke McCaffrey, which they should be, simply because he is a very versatile chess piece. And the reason why I say that is because he can sort of do the same things that his brother can do. From lining up in the slot to, he could probably double as a running back. He can basically do it all. Luke McCaffrey on the right team, in the right situation, he can probably be just as effective as Christian McCaffrey. And I know, you can't really say that because they're, two different players and two different skill sets, blah, 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 blah. No. The McCaffreys, if you've ever looked at their father and then Christian McCaffrey and now Luke McCaffrey, all of them have shown versatility. That is like the number one thing that they have is versatility. And it is amazing to see it. But now let's get to the part where not a lot of people are going to want to listen to, but I'm going to like it simply because I love talking about other people's teams. Now, we're going to do a new segment, and we'll probably do it probably during the season as well. Open door, closing door, shut. Okay? So, open door, closing door, shut door is basically the three categories in which your team, where I think your team would fall in, trying to compete for a championship. Now, for the open doors, for the players, for the teams who, they still have a chance to win a Super Bowl within the next 2 to 5 years, I would probably say. It is, the usuals: Ravens, Chiefs, Niners, Eagles, Rams, and Lions. And the reason why I put the Lions there is because their team is still relatively young. And so, yes, they do have, players that they're going to have to pay soon, but their window is still very much open. very much open. When you look at the division, the only teams that they will probably have to worry about is Green Bay and possibly the Vikings. If the Vikings draft a quarterback, if they get either JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix or whatever quarterback, if they can do it, then they can be a problem as well. But for right now, the Lions are the top dog in that division right now. Their roster is just it's amazing right now. They're in such a beautiful place right now. They have the receiver core. They have the running backs. They have the tight ends. They have the quarterback. Even on the defense, they even upgraded certain pieces on the defense. So they're in a very great place. They really are. Now, when we get to the Rams, the reason why I put the Rams in there, even though, yes, they did lose Aaron Donald, to retirement, that team is still dangerous. And the reason why I say they're still dangerous is because they still have Sean McVay. They still have Matt Stafford. They still have Cooper Kupp. They still have Puka Nacua. Not teams, but there were a lot of people that were writing off the Rams last season. Everyone was thinking, post Super Bowl, they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to flop. They're just, going to be forgotten and whatnot. No, they were in it. They were in it to the end. They could have easily really made, a deep push within the playoffs. And they probably will this year. They are a team who consistently shows that they don't need, all of their picks to be successful. They don't. They have showed that, we can go a few years without a first round pick and still draft very high, caliber players. And they've done it. Case in point, Puka Nacua. I mean, they drafted Puka. What else is there to talk about? Now, as we get to the other three teams, it's going to get a little bit trickier. Now, with the Niners, the problem with the Niners is, yes, their door is open, but to a certain extent. And the reason why I say that is because now they're starting to hit a point where they're losing players because of cap reasons, right? They literally had to release Eric Armstead. And pretty soon, if they don't win this year, they're probably going to have to release more players. They have a lot of big contracts on their books. They got Nick Bosa's contract, Gravedigger, a.k.a. Javon Hargrave, if you don't know. Deebo Samuel, you have Trent Williams, you have Christian McCaffrey's contract, you got George Kittle's contracts. You got Fred Warner's contract. You got a lot of big contracts on your books. And, that can only get you so much. That can only get you, to a certain point. Okay? You have to win. You have to win in order to justify all the moves that they made to build this team to where it is. You have to. Because if they don't win a Super Bowl within the next 2 to 5 years, people are going to put them in the same category as the Bills. And we all know what happened with the Bills. If you don't know, there's a documentary on Hulu and ESPN Plus that you can watch, and it will explain everything for you. Sorry, Bills. I'm so sorry. But with the Ravens are in a very unique position only because they don't have a whole lot of holes to really patch up on their team, but at the same time they would like to sort of win a Super Bowl now rather than try to retool and go through sort of a very soft rebuild and whatnot. And even then, I could probably make a case that, they could probably address a lot of their needs in this draft and then post-draft. They could. The Ravens have showed time and time again. Now, before I finish my statement, I am not a Ravens fan. I will never be a Ravens fan, but this is probably the only compliment that I will give for the Ravens. They have hit on their draft picks. Draft picks that, people wouldn't expect, they have hit. They have. They've done a very good job in drafting and, addressing other needs in free agency, post draft. They've done a very good job at it. So kudos to them. Now, moving on from the Ravens, because I want to this isn't the Ravens show. This is Football Junkies. Now, when we get to closing, teams that, their Super Bowl chances are closing, it's the Cowboys, Dolphins, Bills, Bengals, and Browns. Now, you're probably wondering, Cowboys were always going to make it to the Super Bowl. It's always our year. No, it's not. No, it's not. It has not been your year since 95. Okay? It hasn't. You guys keep on saying every single year, it's our year. No, it's not. It's please stop. Please go get some help. The reason why their door is closing at this point is simply because they have too many players who are going to be asking for big money, and on top of that, their coach is in the hot seat. I don't care what anyone says. Mike McCarthy, mark my words, on this day at 1:53 on a Friday, mark my words, Mike McCarthy is in the hot seat. He has to show up. And if he doesn't, Jerry is going to fire him before Thanksgiving. He is. Simply because the team has not really done anything. They've been stagnant. And with the talent that they have on both sides of the ball, you would think, oh man, these guys could potentially make it to the NFC Championship. They don't. They fold. They fold. Every single year, when the lights get bright, they say, nope, turn off those lights. That's what they do. And so when you have situations where, there are reports coming out that potentially CeeDee Lamb might sit out, when you have conflicting reports about Micah Parsons, when you have reports about Dak Prescott, basically they're saying that they're not going to, open up contract talks with him, that can muddy things up. That can. And, not to mention the defense alone. The defense has a lot of holes. And so they're in a position where their draft picks have to hit. Each of their draft picks has to hit. If those draft picks do not hit, they are not going to go anywhere. They're just not. And you would think they would, be able to be super competitive with the division that they have. No, not really. They still fold. Every single year, they still fold. But moving on to the Dolphins. Yes, the Dolphins. The reason why I say the Dolphins door is closing is simply because they did not prepare for the long term. They just prepared for the moment. And this will probably be a bigger discussion, with guests and whatnot. The problem with, acquiring a bunch of players in a very small period of time is that when it comes to those large cap hits, they're going to hit you back to back to back to back to back. And so when that happens, it's going to put you in a position where, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. Somebody's going to have to go. Someone's going to have to get the axe. And so what you saw this offseason, even though the offseason still isn't over with, they had to let go of Xavier Howard. They had to let go of Jerome Baker. And they've had to sort of restructure a few people's contracts. And so what you're seeing is a team who basically, they have to win. They're in a win now situation. And if they don't win now, that's it. That's it. They're going to have to start, offloading people's contracts and possibly releasing certain players. They just have to do that. Not to mention they're in active contract talks right now with Tua. So it's, they have this one plate and they can only fit so much on this one plate. And whatever they can't fit on that one plate, well then, hey, oh well. Not to mention, a lot of their draft picks lately really haven't been hitting. So It'll be one thing if if they lose a high end player, but they drafted a player to be their replacement, and they're still and the player that they drafted is playing high. Then it's like, okay, cool, we're fine. But if your draft picks have not been hitting like how they haven't been hitting for them, that's not good. And then not to mention coming down the pipeline, Jalen Phillips is gonna want to get paid. Javon Holland's gonna want to get paid, and Jalen Waddle is gonna want to get paid. And out of those three, Jalen Waddle's probably gonna get paid, and that's not gonna be no chump change. That's gonna be some big boy money. That's gonna be another bag alert. But moving on, the Bills, Bengals, and Browns. Now, with those three teams, the problem with those three teams is with the Bills and Bengals, what their problem is, their defenses have aged. They've aged so much, and that the return rate that for draft picks, it hasn't even really been that good. Okay, not to mention if we can be real here, they've lost a lot. They've lost a lot on both sides of the ball. The Bengals alone, they've lost half of the defensive players that they acquired in free agency. And, their draft picks really haven't been hitting like that either. And on top of that, they still don't have an offensive line. And on top of that, Joe Burrow, even though, yes, by some he is considered an elite quarterback, he just hasn't been available. He hasn't. And that is the number one thing that you need in order to win a championship. You need your quarterback to be available. And he hasn't been available lately. A lot of that can be attested to, the Bengals' decision not to draft, offensive linemen high compared to drafting, players that he probably played with. But that's another story for another day. Now with the Bills, on the other hand, the Bills lost Stephon Diggs. And so now the question is how is this Bills offense going to move? What's going to be the difference maker? Who's going to be the person that's going to step up and going to be like, okay, I'm going to be the head honcho. Who's going to be that person? Because that person needs to be identified now. Because if it's not, it's going to be rocky for them. It is. The AFC is only going to get better and better and more difficult. It is. It's not a cakewalk. It's not like the NFC. No, it's going to get worse. It is. It's going to get worse for a lot of teams. But moving on, with the Browns, it's tough for them. It's tough for them only because they have to win now to justify the Deshaun Watson trade. And the reason why is because Deshaun Watson is the only player to have a fully guaranteed contract. I want to say that again, a fully guaranteed contract. That means if you cut him, if you trade him, do whatever you want, he's still going to get that money. All of that money. And so they're in a position where they have to win. They're in a win now situation. They have to. They just have so many, they have so many great players on that team that you would think by now, okay, they can, they might be able to do something. Nope. Not at all. Not at all. When you have a top 5 offensive line, when you have a top 5 running back, when you have one of the best route running receivers, you traded for Jerry Jeudy, you got David Njoku. That's just on the offense. Then on the defense, you got Myles Garrett on one side. You got Zadarius Smith on the other side. You got that crazy secondary. You have it. So what is not clicking? What is not clicking, Cleveland? Flick the switch. Is the switch stuck? Flick it. You gotta flick it. Now, do I think any of these teams could possibly, make it to the Super Bowl in the next 2 to 5 years? I would probably say possibly maybe the Bills. either the Bills or the Bengals. But that only depends on how they do in the draft and how they do, if they make any crazy trades or anything like that. Now, for the teams whose window is shut, I'm talking about it is closed. Put the locks on it. Don't even look at it. It is the Chargers. Unfortunately, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is the Saints, Buccaneers, and Jets. Now, you're probably wondering, well, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Their window is shut at this point, simply because, for one, they have too many holes that they have not addressed properly in free agency. And on top of that, I will not be surprised if they are a team that tries to trade down or try to do something stupid instead of addressing very important needs for this team. You have an offensive coordinator who is basically buddy-buddy with the quarterback. And you have a coach who right now is in a very, very, very hot. I'm talking about the hottest of the hot seat right now. And he has to show something. And if he doesn't, he's going to get fired before Thanksgiving. He is. If you guys don't know anything about that Jets owner is impulsive. He is very impulsive. And he will make a move, when nobody would least expect it. If you don't believe me, look at the past. Now, when we look at the Chargers, the Chargers situation is a little bit difficult only because they have a new head coach. And so this sort of we have to, it's sort of a wait and see type of situation, only to know if they're going to move forward or are they going to continue to regress. That's all I'll say about that. Now, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, yes, that's right, Pittsburgh Steelers. I had to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are in a weird situation as well, simply because, yes, they have quarterbacks on the team, but they don't have a long-term answer for a quarterback. You don't. You have a lot of holes on the team, and on top of that, you have a lot of people that are looking for a bag. So you have all these different type of things on top of you need your picks to hit. I can make a case right now, and I'm not saying this, out of biasness, because I'm a Steelers fan, but I'm just being completely transparent, completely honest here. The Steelers draft picks this year, they have to hit like how they hit last draft. They have to. That's the position that they're in right now. And if they don't hit, especially those first 3 picks, it's a very tricky situation. Not to mention, when you have the owner who has basically sort of, put the fire under Mike Tomlin and basically say, hey, listen, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of not being in the playoffs. We need to win. We need to win some playoff games. When you have that in, and other factors as well, that can definitely, muddy things up, honestly. And then with the Saints and Buccaneers, they're in a weird situation as well, only because one team isn't prepared for the future. Case in point, the Saints, they're just not prepared. They thought Derek Carr would be the answer, but he's not being the answer. And so what you're seeing is a lot of those players, it's just not clicking. It's not. And the reason why I say that is because they have an older roster. And so those players, a lot of those players, they're not going to want to pay cuts and restructures and whatnot every single year. At some point, somebody's going to say, hey, listen, I've been doing this for like the past 5 or 6 years, and it hasn't gotten us anywhere. So I'm not taking a pay cut, and they'll probably get released. You got players like Michael Thomas, who, ever since he got his deal, what has he done? Nothing. Nothing. Nado. Zilp. Nothing. The only bright spot is what? Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave? That's probably the only bright spot. And even then, you could probably trade Alvin Kamara and probably get some good compensation for it. I know I definitely did see a few articles swirling around that Marshawn Lattimore would be available for trade this offseason for the right price. So I mean, they have to start from the bottom. They're trying to avoid the inevitable, but everybody has to go through a rebuild. Everybody, even the Pittsburgh Steelers. Buccaneers, they have an older roster as well. They still have a lot of players who are from that Super Bowl team, and this will probably be their last year before they, hanging up and whatnot. So the problem with the teams who are in the closing and shut, and even in the open, is that things could change instantly. Things could change so quickly if they hit on their draft picks, if they make a crazy trade or whatever the case may be. Things can change. Now, am I saying there are some teams that are in a better position than others? Yes, of course. But to say that, a team like the Bills or the Dolphins or the Saints or the Steelers are in a position where, they're in win now mode, they can do it, they can do it. No. It's going to be difficult for them. They would have to have the perfect offseason. I'm talking about draft picks hit. They signed the free agents that nobody will least expect. They would have to have almost a borderline perfect season. Just everything. Everything would just have to be almost sort of a Cinderella-esque type of season. That's the only way this works. But I'm going to end this. I'm going to end this right now because all I'm going to do is just going to continue to jumble. If you like what you are listening, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform that you guys are listening on. Follow us on Instagram at football_junkies pod. That's right, football_junkies pod. Also, leave a comment. Leave a comment under there. Just if you have a favorite team, let me know. I'll do a mock draft for them. I'll talk about them. Throw me some ideas. I'll talk about it. I'll debate with you guys. Until then, folks, some more stuff so I can continue to give you guys the fix that you guys need. And until then, I love you guys. Peace.